Well, welcome back, everyone. I hope everyone had a great holiday weekend and your week has started off well. Really excited to be back here meeting with you and answering some questions for you in person. So this has been great. Some of the questions we've been receiving have been about nonprofits and how are we functioning as nonprofits with funding and our memberships and things like that. So we got two speakers here today, Leah King, President CEO of United Way of Tarrant County. So it's fantastic. And Mitch Whitten, who's Executive Vice President over at Visit Fort Worth, the Convention and Visitors Bureau, for those of you who don't know. So we're going to listen to them chat. They've got some best practices. And then, as always, as soon as we get done, we'll ask some questions that you send in. So with that, Leah, why don't you go ahead and start off?
Great. First, just let me say thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this. You guys have been doing a great job of keeping the community updated, and I can't imagine what that takes to put this together. So appreciate the opportunity to be here and just share some information that we've gleaned over the past, I guess 5-6 weeks now. What we'll talk about will fall into probably 3 categories. One will be resources for nonprofits. It'll be resources from nonprofits, and then it'll be requests from the community. And then in between there, what I'll do is just sprinkle in some of the things that we have found to be best practices as we have carved out and started to write down just what a day-to-day and how our communication ought to flow for the organization. So in terms of what's available for nonprofits, especially as it relates to funding, one of the things that we want to be sure that everybody is aware of is an initiative that spans North Texas. And that involves all area United Ways, as well as the Community Foundation of Texas, the North Texas Community Foundation here in Fort Worth, as well as the Dallas Foundation. One central place for all area nonprofits to go to apply for funding. It's a website, it's northtexascares.org, northtexascares.org. That website is basically a one-stop shop for the nonprofit community. And I can tell you there are easily about 50 different funding organizations there. Organizations like local foundations, family foundations, corporations, whether from their corporate foundation and or marketing. So a host in a wide variety of those that are interested in supporting nonprofits through this crisis and making sure that as many as possible are able to remain viable and focused on serving their client and not really having to worry about how do we keep the doors open. In terms though of how you keep the doors open, it's important to note that the CARES Act provides a great opportunity for organizations that have either been able to maintain their staff without doing furloughs or payroll reduction, so pay cuts essentially. The Paycheck Protection Program through the CARES Act is a great opportunity and really is, it starts out as a loan, so to speak, but quickly turns into a grant, assuming that no changes are made in staffing levels. And that is something that will help to offset not just salary, but also you can use for rent and other payments. And so if you haven't had a conversation with your banker about that, I highly, highly encourage that to happen. We fully expect the first round of funding to run out. And we also expect there to be a round 2, but we just don't know how quickly that will materialize. And so if you haven't had the discussion with your bank, you really need to do so. And if you haven't applied, get your paperwork ready so that when round 2 comes, you're ready to go and you can be in on the initial funding cycle. I can tell you just from our own experience, it took less than 2 weeks from the time that the application was made until the time that the funding was received. And so it was a remarkably expeditious turnaround, and we were very pleased to see that occur. The other thing to say is about the SBA loans, and I know that the Chamber has had multiple webinars on the disaster loans, and that's something that I would also encourage organizations to look into. And then if you're interested or you have a need to purchase PPE, personal protective equipment, to carry out your mission, The county is really making itself available for bulk purchases, and you can send requests to T as in Tarrant, C as in county, admin@tarrantcounty.com. And you can be included in a group that is looking at different PPE for purchasing power, especially if you're a smaller organization and you can't make some of the bulk orders and minimum orders that some organizations might require. Lean on your board. Your board is a great asset for you. And I don't mean just in terms of going out and telling your story, but helping you navigate through these waters. Oftentimes at nonprofit organizations, the staff is lean and you have a variety of expertise that's present on the board. So it's also incumbent to keep them informed. Let them know about your response. Let them know about what is happening and keep them briefed. I tend to do it on a weekly basis. I do a recap to our board and I let them know what's happening from a personnel perspective. So what's happening with the office. I let them know about our work. And then I let them know what I need from them and how they can help. And so we try to make it quick and efficient so that we can get information out. I would use that same practice with your donors. In an environment like this, communication is key and it's almost impossible to over communicate. So let people know what you need, let them know how you're responding, and let them know the impact of their resources, whether that's time or money, into the organization. So with that, it's a lot. It's 1/3 of what I have, but I don't want to bore everybody with everything out of the gate. How about I take a pause and turn it over to Mitch?
Well, thank you for that. And yeah, Mitch, if you want to go ahead, that'd be fantastic.
Well, Leah, thank you. It can be very overwhelming in situations like that when you're dealing with a global pandemic and really needs that have hit society. Not only our service industry, which makes up 80% of our hospitality industry locally, the hotels, the restaurants, the musicians, every business has been affected. So I want to share a case study of something we've done because it can be overwhelming. Who do I help and where do I get started? And it goes back to that starfish on the beach model. If you can pick up one and put it back in the water and help one person, whether you're delivering groceries for your neighbor or whether your nonprofit can contribute more broadly. So let me share just a brief case study of something we partnered with Leah on. Really to set this up, I just want everybody to think for a moment about the role that creativity plays in our community. We've talked a lot in the last couple of years at Visit Fort Worth and in the community about the importance of creativity. If you go to a food festival, chances are you will hear music. Parade had Sounds of the Sun, had a music component to it this year to record rave reviews. Film plays an important role in our community. The movie Miss Juneteenth, which was filmed on the east and historic south side of the city, just won a prestigious award at South by Southwest. And even our art scene is getting recognized across the Metroplex for making a mark on our city. So the virus threatened all of our livelihoods, and we didn't want to forget the creatives who have brought so much life and energy to our city. We call on them all the time to provide music, to provide entertainment. Really, they're building our culture. It really started with an artist named Rachel Golay, who plays often on the South Side, and this past January had just represented Fort Worth at the New York Times travel show in New York. And when the virus hit, Rachel said, we need to raise money. I'm going to start a GoFundMe for artists. And one of the great things that happens in this community is when you need help, people often say yes. So the fund outgrew Rachel Golay's ability to manage it when she hit her first goal of $10,000. So recently we called Leah at the United Way and said, would you help us? So Visit Fort Worth, along with United Way and our affiliate here, Fort Worth, said, let's promote this fund together. And the United Way has stepped in and agreed to cover the credit card processing fees for donations. And we've been able to hit another milestone with a total funds raised of $20,000. Now that puts $300 in the pockets of about 100 artists, whether they're painters, filmmakers, musicians. And while the need is a lot greater, and we won't be able to help all the people who need it. The great thing is that everybody's appreciative of any help you can give. So we've been able to continue this campaign to show that the creative side of Fort Worth is just as important as any side, and is an important industry. We partnered with Billy Bob's to do an online concert, and that generated a generous gift from the Dickies Corporation and from many other individual contributors. One of the themes I think you'll hear us about today is partnership. As a nonprofit especially, it can feel very scary to think, I've got to go do something on our own. And the time has never been better than to reach out, find out who else is doing things, and reach out and say, we do this. Partnering with United Way, broadcasting concerts on Facebook. Here you see Grady Spencer, and here's Smooth Vega, all different types of music. TX Whiskey is doing their own couch sessions, paying artists to play online, the Ranch Radio. Everybody's trying to contribute, and there's so many different ways you can do that. Artists are getting out there on their, Jack Barksdale, 13-year-old Jack Barksdale, doing a concert on Ring on his doorstep. So I really love the creativity that's happening in our community and the people who are stepping up and saying yes. Finally, I just want to thank the restaurant community for all they're doing, really fighting to survive with their curbside and delivery services. And so you can go to our website and see a list of those. Many of these restaurants are providing meals to our first responders, they're giving meals to people who've been laid off for free, people who've been affected. And I just think the generosity and love that's coming out of our community is pretty amazing. Again, it can be overwhelming. There's a lot of work to do, but Chris, that's a snapshot of something Visit Fort Worth's been doing in partnership with United Way and many others.
Well, thank you, Mitch. That was great information, and really appreciate you going through those slides for everybody there. So questions then, for those who are tuned in here, don't forget that down at the bottom you have the Q&A portion down here where you can type in your questions. If we can hop back to funding real quick. So you talked about how do you communicate with your donors, your investors, your members. We talked about the SBA. Do you know the difference between the 501c3s or C6s, or who can make those applications to the SBA for those funding, or the CARES Act, or anything else? And then again, as you're communicating with your contributors, what's the best way to do that?
So how about I answer the question about communicating with your contributors, if you want to take, Mitch, the C3, C6 part. So communicating with the contributors, we've taken a more is more approach here because there's so much information coming out literally from everywhere. And so we're taking advantage of every communication vehicle we can get our arms wrapped around. Literally from picking up the telephone and communicating and just seeing how they're doing. And that was really our first approach, was we wanted to check in and make sure that everybody was okay. And generally, once they confirmed they were okay, they were curious to know, were we okay? And so that opened the door for us to share how we were responding and what the needs were that we were seeing within the community. So that's by phone. We also do very, very frequent social media updates. Sometimes with postings, we definitely make sure that we share other organizations' information, not just our own. If we feel that it's going to be helpful to the community at large, then we share that. And then I have been making a series of videos that provide just different information to the community. And that is circulated through our online newsletter, as well as social media as well. And then you heard me mention email. And so we email to donors on a regular basis. And depending on the demographic, I might text them, or not just demographic, but maybe how busy they are, right? So I know they want an update, or at least they need an update, but they don't have a lot of time to share. Then I might share, 3 bullet points. Here's what we did. We did this because of your generosity, and we couldn't do it without you. Generally speaking, in today's environment, that elicits a response back. I will tell you, in times outside of now, the communication level back from the donor is usually lower but everyone is acutely aware of the urgency of the need within the community. So I will say that folks are really attuned to hearing from their nonprofit partners and responding in kind pretty regularly.
Yeah, I just want to add to that, Leah, I'm really glad to hear you talk about the different forms of communication. I think this has been the comeback of the phone call. I think that getting on the phone and working that list is something we probably haven't done in a long time because we rely on social media and email, and crisis has put people back on the line. I may need a landline soon, working from home and being tethered to that. But it really is, and it's easy for any nonprofit to say, we're just one player in a sea of pandemic, but I appreciate all those who've been communicating with us. Chad Matthews from the Lone Star Film Society was on KERA this morning, sharing his wisdom, and you never know when your piece of information will be helpful. So I'd encourage all the nonprofits online to keep talking and to keep communicating, and all those forms of communication are perfect. One of the things that you may run into, there are some organizations, Leah, like you said, if you're a 501c3, the CARES can be very, very helpful for you. And I believe some C3s have already received funding from their applications. There are other organizations like Chris's, the Chamber, and myself at Visit Fort Worth who are 506, and the CARES Act does not apply to us. So we're hoping that may come around next if there is the CARES Act too. I just encourage you to talk to your bankers, and as Leah said, you likely have people on your board who are in finance, banking, law. Call on them. They want to help. I was on the phone with a lawyer on our board the other day who's helped understand how events may need to cancel or not cancel as we now look into summer and fall. So use those experts to help you navigate. It may take some time to connect. People have, everyone's busy fielding questions, but keep trying. And I think that those experts are there to help you.
Great. I wanted to go back to something, Mitch, you were talking about with the partnerships with the other organizations. So we have a question here that it's more geared towards us, but how do we let the chamber know the programs we're offering online? For that response, email us, let us know what's going on, but also leverage the member information center that we have on our website. That's the area wherever we're pushing everybody to talk about their different programs, the restaurants, the nonprofits, everybody leverage that technology, because that's where the 1,700 members are going to get information. But speaking, more about that, Mitch or Leah, a lot of organizations want to help out there, and they don't necessarily know who to get engaged with or how to get engaged. Maybe they're reaching out to Mitch, maybe they're reaching out to us, but how can we better as a community leverage the partnerships that we have and leverage the resources that are out there with all the different nonprofits?
I've been so inspired by this community for that very reason. And Mitch and I talk about this a lot. The number of people that have stepped up to say that I want to help it's staggering, and it's a great thing. And it's why you end up with what might seem like uncommon partners. I mean, who would think that Visit Fort Worth and United Way ended up partnering on something? But when we look holistically at what the needs are in the community, we can figure out a way to make it work and to leverage our respective assets so that they're bringing the best of what they have through the creative. We're bringing the best of what we have through management of funds, and make it easy. And that's really the goal for all of us, is to try to make it as easy as possible to get involved. So if you have organizations that want to get involved and they don't know where to start, if they want to get involved from a volunteer perspective, they can easily start at volley.org, VOLY.org. And that's a place where you can go and see what volunteer opportunities exist within the community. If they want to leverage assets, so let's say they have a fleet of vehicles and they want to make those available for delivering meals and things like that, something that might be maybe doesn't show up on volley.org, they can always reach out to me, they can reach out to the chamber, they can reach out to Mitch to say, how do I plug in? We are working constantly on coordinating efforts. What we all understand is that this crisis is at a scale that none of us have ever even fathomed before, and it requires all of us to come to the table with our respective assets. And so let's leverage those together And it's imperative that we say, okay, no, we're going to be focused on what we can do, our core competency, but we want these other respective organizations to come alongside us so that from a client delivery perspective, it's seamless, right? There's no space in between where we end and where the next organization begins. And we spend quite a bit of time coordinating those very types of things.
I think too, with regard to partnership, that's part of your communication, is letting the community know by contacting the chamber, contacting Leah and myself, because the people want to partner, and you may have part of your organization is immobilized right now. We're not doing our normal activities. And I've encountered people who want to know, how can I volunteer? How can I help answer phones? How can I help connect? So the activity is really important. You will probably find I think we're seeing much more of that around the community.
All right, great. Thank you, Mitch. So Leah, next question is for you. Looking ahead, how do you think this is going to affect fall fundraising campaigns, such as employer-based, employee giving campaigns, and how?
So we are anticipating a pretty staggering hit. From what we can see from the business community, many of them have had to scale back on their staff. And as a result, that is going to potentially have some impact on our annual campaign. So the how is in, typically what we do is during the fall is the height of campaign season for us. And companies do a variety of events generally to help raise funds and awareness within the organization. We're providing an alternative, and we have a lot of really fun things that you can do virtually. So if this goes on, or if it comes back again later on in the year and we end up working from home, we don't want to have the reason that a campaign happens be because we can't be in person. So alternative solutions to helping us stay top of mind and front and center with these employees is important, but we also have to recognize that we may need to be there to support those employees and not be seeking support. So being open and willing to work together and understanding what they might be struggling with is really what our team is focusing on, and trying to get a handle on what a potential decline might look like. But I got to tell you, I mean, we are being realistic in terms of what that might look like. And we've made models from a 40% decline and what that would look like, 50 and up, and what we would have to do within the organization to accommodate that type of drop in revenue. So, I think that it's important for all of us to be planning and looking ahead, and not just hoping for the best, doing what we can to make it happen, but you got to know what your risks are today.
I would just add to that a lot of nonprofits rely on fundraising events as part of their campaigns. And I think that, we don't yet know what the event calendar will look like, what's going to be possible through the summer, much less into fall. And so I would encourage you two things. Look at the indicators. Continue to follow what sports is doing, what other indicators show what events may or may not be possible. I know that our state and local leaders are working on plans on how we begin to incrementally with this virus. And I think too is you may have to pivot and say we're not going to place holding an event this fall. We're going to pivot and do a different type of fundraising campaign, even knowing our donor base is economically challenged. If you are event schedules, what's going on, what does it look like in the fall and even into next spring, email us at localrequest@fortworth.com, and we can help you take a look at calendars at facilities and hotels and what's going on in the city.
So another question has come in here, and I don't know, Leah or Mitch, who would want to ask or answer this, but talking about, equity, obviously, I think it goes back to that partnership conversation we just had of, all the organizations that are out there, the different chambers of commerce and the different organizations. How can we ensure that we're keeping that look on really everybody who's being affected by this?
Is huge, and it's an important tenet in everything that we do. And in fact, we were just having some dialogue about that this morning. As a matter of fact, on the northtexascares.org, a little bit of inside baseball is part of the scoring matrix includes a question about equity, not just what race or ethnicity, but also geographic, also size of organization. We utilize a lot of data indicators to tell us where the needs are and what the needs are. So down zip code information, and understanding that basic needs are primary right now: food, shelter, utilities, that kind of thing. And so that is part of the scoring matrix, but also it's incumbent upon all of us as leaders to be having those discussions and on a regular basis, reminding people that there are small in-home daycare centers. Well, they have needs and it might be difficult for them to access some of those SBA funds. What other opportunities exist out there, and make sure that we're making that information available to them. So, I see the city of Arlington, the city of Fort Worth, and other municipalities, Tarrant County, and then the chambers, Fort Worth Chamber, Arlington Chamber, really going out of their way on a daily and weekly basis to provide updates, to share that information and those resources as broadly as possible. The city's website has a list of resources. Our website has a list of resources, and on and on and on. And, I don't think that we can, again, back to communication, over communicate where and how to access resources.
Mitch, did you have any thought on that?
Yeah, I'll just add that inclusion and equity requires a daily commitment to ask the question, where are the gaps, and who is not at the table. We know that equity and inclusion are about everybody being at the table, adding seats to the table larger. So this last year, when we launched a campaign called Discover Fort Worth, that was really an expression of the connectivity that we as a community are trying to build by asking, who are we not talking to? Why, where are all the people we need to meet and to. So, for example, through our music and film initiative, we spent the last 2 years really trying to go out and introduce ourselves to creative people all across the city. We've not met that goal 100% by any means, but by making sure people feel welcome, by making sure that they know that the city cares and that the community wants to support. We've had people from every geography around Fort Worth apply for our Creative Industries grant. And again, it requires us to continue to ask that question, where are we not going and who else can we reach out to, and doing that daily outreach.
Great. Well, I think we just got another question. As I read this last question here, was there any other thoughts as we're going through this that you guys haven't mentioned that you'd like to say real quick?
Well, I just wanted to make sure that folks understand that on our website is a list of resources that's available for anybody to utilize. And that website is unitedwaytarrant.org. When you get there on the landing page, you'll see a coronavirus, a big blue panel. Just click on there. It takes you directly to a list of resources. It's broken down by topic. And so it makes it kind of easy to navigate. So that's a great place to go to just to find out, how do you plug in or access different resources that are available throughout the county?
I would add that I think my answer to that question, the silver linings, as Leah has talked about, is strengthened partnerships and new partnerships. At Visit Fort Worth, we're so focused on the people who are coming here to visit and how we motivate them to come check out our city. Through this crisis, we realized that when we come out of it, our first visitors will be locals, and encouraging people to get out and their city. So I think the work that, Chris, we're building with your organization and the partnerships with others, Leah, including yours, will make for a better city, as we realize we truly are all in this together. And, that doesn't be perfect every day, but I think that renewed commitment to how can we help each other is definitely a big silver lining for us. And I think really ultimately a bright spot for Fort Worth.
Great. Well, really appreciate the both of you coming on and sharing some of your wisdom on the subject with us. So thank you again. And wanted to just very quickly for the audience, let you know what is going on the rest of the week. If you have not seen it, tomorrow we have State Senator Beverly Powell from District 10 who will be in. Brandon will be talking with her about what's going on the state level and how are we supporting, the economic growth of our community. And then on Thursday, we talk about rediscovering your why. evaluating the company's purpose, in your value chain. As we're looking at this difficult time, are you auditing yourselves? Are you looking at better ways to do things that can certainly help your business sustain and grow during this difficult time? So we look forward to seeing all of you again tomorrow at 2:00 with Senator Powell, and then again on Thursday. So thank you all very much. Thank you again to our speakers, and have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Leah. Thanks.